The crystal chandelier above us cost more than the Honda Civic I had parked 3 blocks away to avoid the valet fees. Its light fractured into 1,000 rainbows, dancing across the pristine white tablecloth of Les Bernardins, mocking me. I pulled the sleeves of my black hoodie down over my wrists, a nervous tic I hadn't been able to shake since high school. Around me, the air smelled of truffles, aged wine, and old money. My father, Richard Miller, sat at the head of the table like a king on his throne. He was wearing his navy Brooks Brothers suit, the one he saved for closing deals, though he hadn't closed a significant deal since 2015. He was swirling a glass of Pinot Noir, his eyes scanning the room, desperate to catch the gaze of someone, anyone, more important than himself. To his right sat my mother, Linda, dripping in pearls that I knew were fake, though she'd die before admitting it. And to his left, my older sister, Jessica. Jessica, the influencer, the visionary, the golden child, who is currently scrolling through Instagram with a bored expression, her acrylic nails clicking against the screen like the tapping of a hungry spider. And then there was me, Katie. "Richard, look, isn't that the vice president of Chase Bank over there?" Mom whispered, leaning in, her eyes wide with that desperate social hunger that always made my stomach turn. Dad squinted, adjusting his posture. "I believe it is. I should go say hello. Networking, Linda. It is the lifeblood of this family." He didn't move, though. He never did. He just adjusted his silk tie and finally deigned to look at me. His gaze started at my messy bun, traveled down to my makeup-free face, lingered with disdain on my hoodie, and ended at my worn-out sneakers. "Katie," he said, his voice dropping an octave, losing the warmth he reserved for waiters and strangers, "must you look like that?" I cut a piece of the bread roll on my plate, keeping my eyes down. "It's a birthday dinner, Dad. I came straight from the warehouse. Shift ended at 6. "The warehouse," Jessica snorted without looking up from her phone. "God, it sounds so dirty when you say it. Can't you just say logistics? At least pretend you have a career." "It is a career," I said quietly, buttering the bread. My hands were rough, the skin dry, evidence of labor. Evidence of reality. And someone has to pay the bills. "Don't start with your martyr act," Dad snapped, flagging down a waiter to refill his wine. "We are at a 5-star establishment. People here are captains of industry, innovators, and you show up looking like you just robbed a convenience store. It is embarrassing, Katie, truly." The waiter arrived, a young man with a stiff upper lip. He looked at me, then at my father, sensing the tension. He poured the wine in silence. "I'll have the tasting menu," Jessica announced loudly, "and the wine pairing. I need to post it for my followers. Engagement has been down lately. People want to see luxury." I did the mental math instantly. The tasting menu was $300 per person. The wine pairing was another $150. Dad's credit card was nearly maxed out. I knew this because I was the one who paid the minimum balance last month anonymously. "Jess, maybe just an entree," I suggested gently. "The prices here are—" "Quiet," Dad hissed. He glared at me, his face flushing red. "Do not discuss money at the table. It is pedestrian. Jessica will have what she wants. She is building a brand. That is an investment, unlike your manual labor." He pointed a finger at a small round table near the kitchen doors, separated from the main dining area by a decorative fern. "In fact, why don't you sit over there? The waiter can move your setting." I froze. "What?" "You are ruining the aesthetic, Katie," Mom chimed in, her voice sickly sweet, the way she sounded when she was lying to her friends about Jessica's modeling career. "Just for tonight, honey. Your father might see business partners. We can't explain you. It's better this way. We'll still order for you." You want me to sit at the kids' table? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I was 32 years old. It's not a kids' table, Dad said, waving his hand dismissively. It's an overflow table. Go on, don't make a scene. You know how your mother gets with her migraines. I looked at them, really looked at them. Jessica was smirking, a cruel, satisfied curl of her lip. Mom was avoiding my eyes, pretending to admire the centerpiece. Dad looked annoyed that I was still there, like a stain on his perfect evening. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, a harsh sound that made heads turn. For a second, I thought about leaving. I thought about walking out that door, getting in my Civic, and driving until the gas ran out. But I couldn't, not yet. I needed them to confirm who they really were. I needed the full picture. Fine, I said. My voice was hollow. I picked up my plate and walked to the small table by the kitchen. The swinging doors pushed a draft of hot air and the smell of dish soap onto me every few seconds. From my vantage point, I could see my family laughing. Dad was telling a story, probably lying about his golf handicap. Jessica was taking selfies with her wine glass. They looked like a perfect, happy family, a portrait of success. I took a bite of my bread. It tasted like ash. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was an old model, screen cracked in the corner. I unlocked it and opened an app that looked like a calculator. I typed in a passcode. The screen shifted, revealing a dashboard of complex analytics. Nexus Logistics System status, online. Global revenue UTD, $1.2 billion. Pending acquisition, Miller & Sons Enterprises, debt purchase. I watched the numbers tick up. Every second, cargo ships in Singapore, trucks in Texas, and drones in London were moving goods using the software code I had written in my garage 5 years ago. Excuse me, miss? I looked up. The waiter was back. He looked sympathetic. Your father ordered you the chicken, he said softly. It's the most economical option on the menu. Thank you, I said. And, he hesitated, lowering his voice, he requested that you pay for your own meal, separate checks. I stared at the waiter. Then, slowly, a smile touched my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a general who just realized the enemy had walked directly into a minefield. Of course, I said. Put it on my tab. I watched my father across the room. He was laughing, unaware that the daughter he banished to the kitchen door owned the bank that held the mortgage on his house. He thought I was trash. He thought I was nothing. Tonight, I was going to let him believe it. But the bill was coming due, and it wasn't going to be for the chicken. The chicken was dry. Fitting, really. I chewed mechanically, watching the performance art taking place at the main table. The waiter brought the bill for their table, the tasting menus, the vintage wines, the desserts adorned with gold leaf. Dad made a show of patting his pockets, frowning, then pulling out his wallet with a sigh that was meant to signify the burden of a wealthy provider, but I knew was actually the panic of a man hoping his card wouldn't be declined. He didn't know I had raised his credit limit by $2,000 this morning. I did it from a burner laptop, rerouting the approval through a shell corporation so it looked like a bank error in his favor. I needed him confident. I needed him reckless. After dinner, we gathered in the valet waiting area. The night air was biting. Jessica was shivering in her strapless dress, refusing to put on a coat because it would cover her outfit. That was exquisite, Mom cooed, linking her arm through Dad's. Richard, you really outdid yourself. The ambiance. Only the best for my girls, Dad said, puffing out his chest. Then he turned to me. Katie, bring the car around. We're going back to the house for Brandy. We need to discuss family business. I drove myself, I reminded him. My car is down the street. Don't be difficult, Jessica snapped. Dad meant you should drive us. He's had wine, you haven't, unless you can't afford gas. I'll follow you, I said, ignoring her jab. The drive to my parents' house was a familiar route of dread. They lived in a sprawling colonial in Connecticut that they couldn't afford to heat properly. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw the peeling paint on the shutters that Dad promised to fix 3 years ago. The lawn was manicured, though. Appearances always came first. Inside, the house was freezing. Mom immediately turned on the gas fireplace in the living room, while Dad poured brandy into snifters. I stood by the doorway, hands in my hoodie pockets, feeling like a stranger in the house I grew up in. "Sit, Katie," Dad commanded, pointing to the ottoman. Not the sofa, the ottoman. "We have news." I sat. "What is it?" Jessica stood up, beaming. She clapped her hands together. "Okay, so you know how I've been working on my personal brand? Well, I'm pivoting. I'm launching a lifestyle consultancy firm, Luxe by Jessica." I blinked. "A consultancy firm? What are you consulting on?" "Taste," she said seriously. "Style. How to be elite. I already have a logo." "It's brilliant," Mom gushed. "She's going to be the next Martha Stewart, but younger and prettier." "We've done the projections," Dad said, putting on his business voice. "It's a gold mine. But as with all great ventures, it requires seed capital." My stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. "We've all chipped in," Dad continued, looking at me intensely. "I've leveraged the equity in the house. Your mother liquidated her jewelry account. We are all making sacrifices for Jessica's future." "That's risky," I said carefully. "Leveraging the house? Dad, you're already—" "Don't you lecture me on finance," Dad roared, slamming his hand on the armrest. "I have run businesses since before you were born. I know what I am doing. This is a sure thing." He took a breath, composing himself. "Now, here is where you come in. We need $5,000 to cover the initial web design and marketing blitz. We know you have that little savings account from your warehouse wages." They knew about my emergency fund, the money I pretended to scrape together by working double shifts, the money I told them was for a new transmission for my car. "Dad, that money is for my car," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My transmission is slipping. If the car dies, I can't get to work." "You can take the bus," Jessica said, sipping her brandy, "or Uber. Don't be selfish, Katie. This is my dream. Do you want to kill my dream?" "It's not about your dream, Jess. It's my safety net. It took me 2 years to save that. And it will take Jessica 2 weeks to earn it back once she launches," Mom interjected, her eyes wide and pleading. "Katie, please, be a sister. Be a part of this family for once, instead of always standing on the outside judging us." "Judging you?" I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. "I'm the one eating chicken by the kitchen door while you eat lobster. I'm the one paying my own way while you leverage a house that—" I stopped myself. I almost said, "a house that I pay the mortgage on." "That you what?" Dad challenged, his eyes narrowing. "That you freeload in whenever you visit? That you will inherit one day out of the goodness of our hearts? You ungrateful little—" He stood up, towering over me. "You will transfer the money tonight, or you are not welcome in this house." "Richard," Mom said softly, but she didn't stop him. She looked at me with that same expectant look. "Give in. Just give in." "Why?" I asked, looking up at him. "Why does she get everything? Why is her fake business worth my actual survival?" "Because she has potential," Dad shouting, the truth finally spilling out. "Look at her. She shines. She belongs in this world. You are a worker, Katie. You are a drone. You are meant to support people like Jessica. That is your role. Accept it." The room went silent. The fire crackled. "A drone," I repeated. "Transfer the money. Dad said, turning his back on me to pour more brandy. And then you can leave. I'm tired of your negative energy. I looked at Jessica. She wasn't even looking at me. She was admiring her reflection in the dark window, posing. Okay, I whispered. Good, Dad said, not turning around. I pulled out my phone, but I didn't open my banking app. I opened my recording app. It had been running since I walked into the restaurant. File saved. Family dinner extortion.mp3. I need to use the restroom, I said, standing up. Make it quick, Jessica said. I need to confirm the web designer by midnight. I walked down the hallway, past the family photos. Jessica at graduation, Jessica at prom, Jessica winning a beauty pageant. There were no photos of me, not one. I walked into the guest bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet, letting the water run cold and hard. I leaned over the sink, staring at the drain. $5,000. They wanted to strip me of the pathetic amount of money they thought I had just to throw it into a furnace of vanity. They didn't see a daughter. They saw an ATM with a pulse. They called me a drone, a worker bee. I looked up into the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes dark circles of exhaustion. But beneath the fatigue, something else was waking up, something cold, something ancient. Accept your role, I whispered to my reflection. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification from my real bank. Interest payment received, $45,000.00. I turned off the water. The guest bathroom was a shrine to my mother's insecurity. Hand towels that were never meant to be touched, soaps shaped like seashells that smelled of chemical roses, and wallpaper that cost more per square foot than my first apartment. I stood there, gripping the edge of the marble sink, my knuckles white. The water in the basin swirled down the drain, carrying the last of my patience with it. I needed a moment, just one moment to breathe before I went back out there and transferred the money. I had decided to do it, not because I was weak, but because I needed them to think they still had power. To catch a predator, you have to play the wounded prey. Then I heard footsteps outside the door. 2 sets, heavy heels and lighter ones. Shh, wait, is she in there? Jessica's voice, muffled but distinct. The water is off. She's probably crying, Mom's voice replied. You know how sensitive she is. God, she's such a drama queen, Jessica sighed. It's only $5,000. She can pick up extra shifts at that warehouse place. It's good exercise for her. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. They were standing right outside the door. I stayed perfectly still, terrified the floorboards would creak. Richard is right, though, Mom said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We need to secure this launch. But Linda, what if the $5,000 isn't enough? The photographer alone is $3,000. I know, Mom, Jessica whined. That's why we need to execute Phase 2. Phase 2? Are you sure? Mom sounded hesitant. She relies on that car. Mom, look at it logically, Jessica said, her voice dripping with that faux intellectual arrogance she adopted when she was trying to sound smart. The Civic is an asset that is depreciating. It's worth, what, $8,000? If we make her sell it, we can use that for the launch party venue. She doesn't need a car. She lives in the city. She can take the subway. It's safer for the environment anyway. But she commutes to New Jersey for work. So she can find a job closer, Jessica snapped. Why are you defending her? Do you want me to fail? Do you want Lux by Jessica to be a joke? No, honey, of course not. You are my star. You know that. Then we make her sell it, Jessica declared. Dad already agreed. We'll tell her the insurance is too high on the family policy and we're cutting her off. She'll have to sell it to pay us back for, I don't know, rent for staying here on holidays? We'll come up with something. She's gullible. She believes anything Dad says. She is a bit simple, Mom agreed. She doesn't understand business like you do. Exactly. We're doing her a favor, teaching her minimalism. They laughed. It was a soft, tinkling sound. The sound of champagne glasses clinking. The sound of ice cracking. Something inside me broke. It wasn't a loud break. It wasn't a scream. It was a silent, clean severance, like a suspension bridge cable snapping under tension, whipping back with lethal force. For years, I had held on to a tiny, pathetic thread of hope. The hope that if I worked hard enough, if I gave enough, if I was successful enough, even secretly, they would eventually love me. I thought they were just misguided, stressed, flawed. But they weren't flawed. They were parasites. They didn't just want my fruit. They wanted to chop down the tree and burn the roots just to warm themselves for 5 minutes. Simple, I whispered. I looked at my reflection again. The tired girl in the hoodie was gone. The eyes staring back were dark, devoid of moisture, and terrifyingly calm. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I didn't open the recording app this time. I opened my contacts and scrolled down to V. Vance Arthur, Senior Partner, Wolf and Associates. I tapped the call button. I held the phone to my ear, counting the rings. 1, 2. Miss Miller? Vance's voice was crisp, alert. It was 10 p.m. on a Saturday, but he answered on the second ring. That's what a $1,000 hourly retainer buys you. Arthur, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Steady, metallic. To what do I owe the pleasure? Is everything all right with the merger? The merger is fine, I said. I'm calling about the contingency plan, the personal matter we discussed 6 months ago. There was a pause on the line, the sound of a pen clicking. The family assets restructuring? You told me that was a nuclear option, Katie. You said you never wanted to use it. I've changed my mind, I said. Initiate code Omega. Omega, Vance repeated. You understand what this means? We call in the debts. We foreclose on the properties. We audit the trust funds. It will be aggressive. I don't want aggressive, Arthur, I said, staring at the locked door. I want total devastation. I want the earth salted. Understood, Vance said, his tone shifting to professional predator. I can have the papers served by Monday morning. No, I said. Wait until Thursday, the Global Entrepreneur Gala. That's theatrical. They like theater, I said. Let's give them a show. Very well, I'll prepare the dossier. Anything else? Yes, I said. Find out who holds the lease on Jessica's apartment in the city, and check my father's gambling debts in Atlantic City. I want the receipts, all of them. Consider it done. Good night, Miss Miller. Good night. I hung up. I took a deep breath. The air in the bathroom no longer smelled like stifling roses. It smelled like victory. I unlocked the door and swung it open. Mom and Jessica were still in the hallway, adjusting their makeup in the hallway mirror. They jumped when they saw me. Katie, Mom gasped, clutching her pearls. You startled us. Did you transfer the money? Jessica asked, her hand out, palm up. I looked at her hand. Soft, uncalloused, demanding. I'm doing it right now, I lied smoothly. Network was slow in there. Good, Jessica said, turning back to the mirror. Hurry up. We need to celebrate. Oh, we will, I said, walking past them toward the living room. We definitely will. 5 years ago. The garage smelled of mold and stale coffee. It was freezing, a bitter November chill that seeped through the thin drywall of the rental unit in New Jersey. I was wrapped in 3 blankets, my fingers stiff as they flew across the keyboard of a laptop that was holding onto life by a thread. Come on, I muttered, my breath visible in the air. Compile. Just compile. On the screen, lines of code cascaded like green rain. This was the prototype for Flow, the algorithm that would eventually become the backbone of Nexus Logistics. I was trying to solve the last mile problem, the inefficiency in shipping that cost companies billions. My stomach rumbled. I looked at the shelf. 2 packets of instant ramen and a jar of peanut butter. That had to last me until Tuesday. My phone rang. It was Mom.
"Katie?" she chirped, background noise of waves and seagulls behind her. "Guess where we are?" "Cabo?" I guessed, rubbing my eyes. "Cabo. The weather is divine. Your father just upgraded us to the presidential suite. Jessica met a promoter and she's at a VIP club right now. We were wondering, did you get that birthday card we sent?" "No," I said. "My birthday was 3 weeks ago. I haven't checked the mail." "Oh, well, happy belated. Listen, honey, your father's card is acting up. Something about a fraud alert. Could you call the bank and pretend to be me? Just tell them we're traveling. I don't want to deal with the hold music." "Mom, I'm working," I said. "I'm really close to a breakthrough." "Working on what? That computer game?" She laughed. "Honey, you need to get out more." "Meet a nice boy. Maybe Jessica can introduce you to one of the bouncers." I hung up. I didn't have the energy to explain that I wasn't building a game. I was building a neural network for automated freight routing. I called the bank. I fixed their card. I went back to coding. That was my life. The shadow, the fixer. 2 years later, Flow went live. I sold the beta license to a mid-sized trucking firm for $2 million. I remember staring at the bank balance, the commas and zeros looking like alien hieroglyphs. My first instinct was to call them. "Mom, Dad, look, I did it. I'm not a failure." But then I remembered the week before. I had come home for Thanksgiving. I tried to tell Dad about the contract negotiations. He had shushed me because the football game was on. "Don't bore us with technical jargon, Katie. Pass the gravy." So I kept quiet. I reinvested everything. I hired Sarah, a brilliant operations manager who had been fired from Amazon for being too efficient. We built Nexus from a 2-person shop into a behemoth. But the money was tricky. I couldn't spend it. If I showed up in a Porsche, they would ask questions. If I bought a mansion, they would want to move in. And worse, they would take credit. Dad would say it was his business DNA. Mom would say it was her prayers. Jessica would ask for a loan to start a handbag line. So I created the warehouse worker persona. It was easy. I just wore the clothes I used to wear when I was poor. I drove the same car. I rented a modest apartment in Astoria. But I couldn't stop helping them. That was my sickness. When Dad's gambling got out of control in 2021, when the bookies started calling the house, I created a shell company, Redstone Holdings. I bought his debt. I sent him a letter saying the debt had been forgiven due to a clerical error. He framed the letter. He told everyone he was a master negotiator. When the bank threatened to foreclose on their house because Dad spent the mortgage money on a sure-thing stock tip that crashed, Redstone Holdings stepped in and bought the mortgage. I became their landlord. They paid their mortgage to a P.O. box that forwarded directly to my trust. I told myself I was protecting them. I told myself I was being a good daughter. But standing in that bathroom, looking at my own dead eyes, I realized the truth. I wasn't protecting them. I was enabling them. I was feeding the tumor that was killing me. I had spent 5 years building an empire of logistics, moving millions of tons of cargo across oceans with pinpoint precision. I could track a shipping container from Shanghai to Chicago in real time. But I couldn't navigate the 3 feet of distance between me and my family. Until now. Now, I was going to use the very tool I built to dismantle them. Logistics is about flow. It's about identifying bottlenecks and removing them. My family was the bottleneck.
I sat back down on the ottoman in the living room. Dad was snored lightly in his chair. Jessica was texting. "Did it go through?" Jessica asked. "Yes," I said. $5,000. Enjoy. "Finally," she said. "You know, you should really work on your transaction speeds. Crypto is the future, Katie. You're so stuck in the past." I smiled, a genuine smile, because I knew something she didn't. In the past, I was the daughter. In the future, I was the executioner. Sunday morning. The house was quiet. Dad was sleeping off the brandy, and Jessica wouldn't surface until noon. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I saw Jessica's laptop on the breakfast counter. It was a sleek MacBook Pro covered in stickers, Boss Babe, Hustle, and a peace sign. It was open. Password protection was for people who thought they had something to hide, and Jessica was too arrogant to believe anyone would dare snoop on her. I took a sip of black coffee. Opportunity doesn't knock, Dad used to say. It kicks down the door. I walked over to the laptop. The screen woke up instantly. She had left her email open, and her bank tabs, and her Lux by Jessica business plan. I pulled a USB drive from my keychain, an encrypted military-grade drive I used for Nexus source code. I plugged it in. I started with the financials. I navigated to her online banking. The balance in her checking account was $42.00. Her credit cards were maxed out. Standard stuff. But then I saw the transfers. Outgoing, $1,200 to CryptoKing_X. Outgoing, $800 to Sephora. Incoming, $2,500 from Richard Miller joint account. She was draining Dad's account. But that wasn't the smoking gun. I dug deeper. I went into her documents folder. I found a PDF titled mom_dad_house_refinance.pdf. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. It was a loan application to a predatory lending company, one of those places that charge 25% interest. It was for a $50,000 personal loan secured against the equity of the house. The document was signed Richard Miller, Linda Miller, but the signatures looked wrong. The loops on the L were too tight. The slant was too vertical. I minimized the window and opened a heavy graphics editing program she had installed. Recent files. There it was. Signatures_scan.psd. She had scanned their signatures from old birthday cards, traced them, and digitally pasted them onto the loan documents. "Oh, Jessica," I whispered, "that's a felony." I dragged the files onto my USB drive. The loan documents, the Photoshop file showing the forgery, the bank statements showing where the loan money went, not to a business, but to a crypto wallet that had crashed to 0 weeks ago. She hadn't just wasted their money, she had committed fraud against them. She had stolen the equity in a house that I technically owned, but they thought was theirs. I heard a floorboard creak upstairs. I yanked the USB drive out, I closed the windows, I refreshed the browser to the homepage. "Katie?" I spun around. It was Mom. She was wearing a silk robe, looking groggy. "Morning," I said, leaning casually against the counter, blocking the laptop with my body. "Just making coffee? Want some?" "Oh, please," she yawned, shuffling in. "My head is pounding. Your father's snoring was like a freight train." She sat down at the island, right in front of the laptop. My pulse spiked. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, not really caring. "Fine," I said. "Mom, I have a question. Did you and Dad take out a loan recently for home improvements?" Mom frowned, stirring sugar into her mug. "A loan? Heavens, no. Your father is terrified of debt right now." "Why?" "Just saw a flyer in the mail," I lied. "Wondered if you were thinking about it." "No, we're tight, Katie. That's why we needed your help last night. Speaking of which, thank you. I know it was hard for you." "You have no idea," I said. "Jessica really appreciates it. She doesn't show it, but she does. She's under a lot of pressure.
It's hard being beautiful and talented in this world. People expect so much. I stared at her. It must be a burden. It is. You're lucky in a way, Mom said, patting my hand. You have a simple life. Punch in, punch out, no expectations. No one is watching you. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. The entire logistics world was watching me. Forbes was trying to get an interview with me for months. Yeah, I said, lucky me. Jessica walked into the kitchen then, looking disheveled and grumpy. Who's talking? She mumbled. Too loud. She walked over to the laptop. My breath held. She slammed the lid shut without looking at the screen. I need a mimosa. I exhaled. I have to go, I said, grabbing my keys. I have a shift. On Sunday, Jessica scoffed. Loser. Someone has to move the boxes, I said. I walked out to my car. As soon as I was in the driver's seat, I plugged the USB drive into my secure dashboard. I sent the files to Vance. Subject: the ammo. Message: she forged their signatures. It's a criminal offense. Add it to the pile. Vance replied in 30 seconds. Received. This changes the leverage. We aren't just evicting them, we can prosecute. I looked back at the house. I saw them in the kitchen window. A family. I put the car in reverse. Wednesday arrived with a flurry of excitement that shook the Miller household to its foundation. I was at work, my actual office at Nexus HQ, a glass monolith overlooking the Hudson, when my phone blew up with texts from the family group chat. Mom, OMG, look what just arrived via courier. Mom sent a photo. It was a heavy, cream-colored envelope embossed with gold leaf. Inside was an invitation. The Global Entrepreneur Gala, honoring the titans of industry. Admit to Mr. and Mrs. Richard Miller, plus one guest. Dad, I knew it. They heard about my consulting work. This is the big leagues, Linda. Jessica, wait, plus one? That's me. It has to be me. They probably want to scout Lux. Mom, of course it's you, sweetie. Who else would it be? I sat in my ergonomic Herman Miller chair, staring at the texts. Sarah, my COO, sat across from me, suppressing a giggle. They took the bait, Sarah said. Hook, line, and sinker. They think they were invited on merit, I said, shaking my head. The delusion is clinical. We sent the invite to the Miller family. We knew Richard's ego would fill in the blanks. Sarah tapped her tablet. I've arranged the seating. They are at table 42. It's near the restrooms, but technically in the VIP zone. Perfect, I said. My phone rang. It was Dad. Katie, he shouted. He sounded manic. Clear your schedule for tomorrow night. Why? I asked, feigning ignorance. We have been invited to the Gala of the Century, the global entrepreneur thing at the Plaza. It's huge. Bloomberg will be there. Elon might be there. Wow, Dad, that's amazing. So, I'm invited? Don't be ridiculous, he snapped. The invitation is for me, your mother, and a guest. Obviously, Jessica is coming. She needs to network for her launch. Then why do I need to clear my schedule? Because the limo service is extortionate, Dad said. $600 for the night. It's robbery. We need a driver. You will drive us. You want me to chauffeur you? You have that black SUV, don't you? The one you say belongs to your friend? It was my company car, a bulletproof Range Rover I used for secure transport. I had told them I borrowed it from a rich neighbor sometimes to move furniture. I suppose I could borrow it. Good. Pick us up at 6 p.m. sharp and wear something distinctive, like a driver, a white shirt and black pants. We want to look professional when we arrive. You want me to dress like a servant? Ideally, yes. It adds class. Don't come inside, obviously. You won't get past security. Just drop us at the red carpet and go find parking. Wait for my text to pick us up. Okay, Dad, I said. I'll be there. I hung up. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide. He wants you to wear a uniform while you are the keynote speaker? He wants me to wait in the car, I corrected, while he accepts the glory. This is going to be brutal, Sarah said. It needs to be, I replied. I need the separation to be absolute. I need them to reject me one last time, publicly, before the truth comes out. Otherwise, they'll spin it. They'll say they always supported me. You have the dress? Sarah asked. I looked at the garment bag hanging on the back of my door. Inside was a custom Versace gown, emerald green, the color of money, the color of envy. I have the dress. And Vance has the papers? Vance will be at the table next to them, with the dossier. Good. Thursday evening came. I put on a pair of black slacks and a crisp white button-down. I tied my hair back in a severe bun. I looked like a high-end valet. I pulled the Range Rover up to the house. They were waiting on the porch. They looked expensive. Mom was wearing a sequined gown she must have rented. Dad was in a tuxedo that was slightly too tight around the waist. Jessica was wearing a dress that was mostly cutouts, clearly designed to grab attention on Instagram. Finally, Jessica said as I unlocked the doors. Be careful with the door handle. I just got a manicure. Yes, ma'am, I said flatly. Dad got in the front seat. Nice car. Rides smooth. Maybe when my consulting deal closes tonight, I'll buy one of these. Maybe. Now, Katie, Dad lectured as we merged onto the highway toward the city. When we get to the plaza, don't speak to the valets. Don't look at the photographers. Just stop, let us out, and vanish. We don't want any confusion about who is the talent and who is the help. I understand, I said. The help stays invisible. Exactly, Mom said from the back. It's not personal, honey. It's just branding. Branding, I repeated. We hit traffic near the bridge. The skyline of Manhattan loomed ahead, a glittering promise. Somewhere in that city, my team was prepping the stage. My name was on the teleprompter. Jessica, did you practice your elevator pitch? Jessica said. Obviously. Hi, I'm Jessica Miller, CEO of Luxe. I'm disrupting the lifestyle space. Disrupting, I muttered, with stolen money. What was that? Dad asked sharply. Nothing, I said, just admiring her confidence. She has every right to be confident, Dad said. She's a winner. Winners take what they want. I gripped the steering wheel. Yes, I said, they certainly do. The approach to the Plaza Hotel was a chaotic river of black limousines and flashing cameras. The air buzzed with that specific frequency of high-stakes wealth. Security guards and earpieces directed traffic with military precision. As I inched the Range Rover toward the drop-off zone, my family's excitement morphed into a frantic vanity. Check my teeth, Dad demanded, baring his veneers at the rearview mirror. Is there spinach? You look powerful, Richard, Mom assured him, applying a fresh coat of lipstick. Jessica, pull your neckline up a bit. We want classy, not available. Mom, stop. Sex sells, Jessica retorted, fluffing her hair. Katie, stop the car right in front of the Getty Images photographer, the one with the big lens. I'll do my best, I said. I pulled up to the velvet rope. A doorman in a top hat stepped forward to open the rear door. Showtime, Dad whispered. Remember, we belong here. They stepped out. The flashbulbs popped, mostly out of habit, then faded quickly when the photographers realized they didn't know who these people were. Dad waved anyway, a stiff, politician-style wave. Jessica struck a pose, hand on hip, lips pursed. I stayed in the driver's seat, engine idling. Dad leaned back into the window. Go find a garage. Don't park too far. I don't want to wait when we're done. Dad, I said, looking him in the eye, are you sure you don't want me to come in? Just to hold your coats? He laughed, a short, barking sound. In that outfit, you look like a caterer. No, stay in the car, Katie. Know your place. He slammed the door. Know your place, I repeated. I watched them strut up the red carpet.
They were stopped at the checkpoint. I saw Dad arguing with the clipboard girl. I saw her frown, check the list, and then reluctantly wave them through. They were on the C-list entry, no red carpet interview, straight to the cloakroom. I waited until they disappeared inside. Then, I drove the car around the corner to the private VIP entrance. The security guard there, a massive man named Tiny, who had worked for me for 3 years, smiled when he saw the car. "Evenin', Miss Miller," he said, opening the gate. "They treatin' you okay?" "The usual, Tiny," I said, driving into the underground bay. "Where's Sarah?" "Waitin' in the green room. Makeup and hair are ready. You have 40 minutes until keynote." I parked. I took a deep breath. I turned off the engine. I stripped off the white shirt and black slacks right there in the car. Beneath them, I was wearing silk shapewear. I pulled the Versace gown from the garment bag in the back. It slid over my skin like liquid armor. I stepped into my Louboutins, 4 inches of lethal red-soled height. I stepped out of the car. I wasn't Katie the warehouse worker anymore. I wasn't the daughter. I was the CEO. I took the private elevator up to the green room. Sarah was pacing, holding a tablet. "They're inside," Sarah reported as I sat in the makeup chair. "They're trying to network. It's painful to watch. Richard tried to talk to Mark Cuban, and security asked him to step back." "Good," I said as the stylist began working on my hair, transforming the severe bun into cascading waves. "Let them feel small." "Jessica is live streaming," Sarah added. "She's showing off the centerpiece. She claims she's meeting with investors." "She's about to meet reality," I said. "Vance is in position," Sarah continued. "He's at the table next to them. He says Richard is getting drunk, fast." "He always does when he's nervous." "We're ready for the sting?" Sarah asked. "Is the mic hot?" "Yes, we planted a networking microphone on the table. Standard procedure for audience interaction," we told the venue. "But really, it's just recording table 42. I put in my earpiece. Patch it through. Suddenly, the sounds of the ballroom filled my head. Clinking glasses, murmuring voices, and then, distinct and loud, my father's voice. Terrible service. I had to wait 5 minutes for a gin and tonic. Do they know who I am? "Calm down, Richard," Mom's voice. "Look, there's that woman from the magazine. Jessica, go say hi." "She looks busy," Jessica whined. "Besides, this champagne is cheap. I thought this was a billionaire event." I listened to them complain. They were surrounded by the greatest minds in business, in a room filled with opportunity, and all they could do was criticize the free champagne. "5 minutes, Ms. Miller," the stage manager said. I stood up. I looked in the mirror. The transformation was complete. Emerald dress, diamonds at my throat, and a gaze that could cut glass. "Let's go," I said. The ballroom was dim, lit only by blue spotlights sweeping across the crowd. I stood in the wings of the stage, hidden by heavy velvet curtains. My heart was a cold, steady drum. Through my earpiece, I could hear everything happening at table 42. Sarah, who was down on the floor acting as a senior coordinator, approached their table. This was the final test, the final chance for them to show even a shred of humanity. I watched on the backstage monitor. Sarah leaned in, looking professional and polite. "Excuse me, Mr. Miller?" Sarah asked. "Yes?" Dad's voice boomed. He sounded tipsy. "Finally, some service. We need more bread." "Actually, sir, I'm checking the guest list," Sarah said. "I see here you have a daughter, Catherine. Is she joining us tonight? We have a seat open at a secondary table. If she's nearby, we could accommodate her." My breath hitched. This was it. Dad laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Katie, here? Oh, no, no. You are mistaken. Katie is, how do I put this, not gala material." "Oh?" Sarah pressed. "Is she not in the family business?" She works in a warehouse, Jessica chimed in, slurring slightly. She moves boxes. She's basically a forklift with hair. They laughed. Mom giggled nervously. She's a sweet girl, but simple, very simple. She doesn't have the ambition that we have. I see, Sarah said, her voice tight. So she has no role in your success? Dad leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that the table mic picked up perfectly. Let me tell you something, miss. I have one daughter, Jessica. She is the star. Katie is the mule. You need mules to carry the bags so the thoroughbreds can run, but you don't bring the mule to the Kentucky Derby. The mule. I closed my eyes. The final thread snapped. Not just snapped, it disintegrated. I understand, Sarah said. Thank you for clarifying. Sarah walked away. I saw her look up at the camera and give a subtle nod. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice boomed through the hall, vibrating in my chest. Please welcome the mystery founder behind the year's biggest logistics unicorn, the woman who digitized the global supply chain, the CEO of Nexus Logistics, Ms. Katie Miller. The room erupted in applause. The spotlight hit the curtain. I stepped out. The light was blinding for a second. Then my vision cleared. I walked to the center of the stage, the emerald dress flowing around me like liquid money. I stood tall, projecting every ounce of power I possessed. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the tech giants. I saw the bankers. And then I found Table 42. The spotlight operator, following my pre-arranged instructions, widened the beam to illuminate the front rows, including them. The reaction was visceral. Dad was mid-sip of his drink. The glass froze halfway to his mouth. His eyes were bulging, looking from the giant screen, displaying my face, to the stage and back again. Mom's hand was over her mouth. She looked like she was witnessing a ghost. Jessica looked angry, confused and angry, like someone had played a prank on her. She was squinting, trying to reconcile the warehouse mule with the woman in the $5,000 dress commanding the room. I leaned into the microphone. Thank you, I said. My voice was amplified, booming, godlike. It's an honor to be here. I paused, letting the silence stretch. For 5 years, I have built Nexus in the shadows, I continued, locking eyes with my father across the room. I was told that to succeed, you need to be loud, you need to be flashy, you need to be a thoroughbred. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Dad flinched as if I'd slapped him. But I learned that true power isn't about noise, I said. It's about leverage. It's about knowing the value of things, knowing the value of a dollar, knowing the value of loyalty, and knowing when an asset has become a liability. I saw Dad slowly lower his glass. He was pale. He knew. In that moment, the alcohol evaporated from his system, replaced by pure terror. Tonight, I said, smiling a smile that didn't reach my eyes, I am stepping out of the shadows, and I am cleaning house. I signaled to the screen behind me. The Nexus logo appeared, a complex web of connections. Logistics is about moving things from where they are to where they belong, I said. And some things belong in the past. I held his gaze. Run, Richard, I thought. Run. But he couldn't. He was paralyzed, and I was just getting started. The applause died down, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt like the air had been sucked out of the Plaza Ballroom. I stood at the podium, gripping the edges of the mahogany stand. My knuckles were white, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of the energy coursing through me. I looked down at table 42. My father, Richard, had slumped back in his chair, his face the color of old parchment. My mother was fanning himself with a napkin, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. Jessica was just staring, her mouth slightly open, the phone she had been live streaming with now resting face down on the tablecloth. They were trapped, and I held the key. Logistics, I said into the microphone, my voice steady and echoing through the vast hall. It is the art of movement. It is the science of reliability. But at its core, logistics is about trust. When you ship a package, you trust that the people handling it value it. You trust that they won't crush it, steal it, or throw it away because it doesn't look important enough on the outside. I clicked the remote in my hand. The giant screen behind me shifted. It displayed a graph, a jagged red line plummeting downward. For years, I have studied failing systems, I continued, pacing slowly across the stage. The train of my emerald dress whispered against the floor. I wanted to understand why some entities, despite having every advantage, every resource, and every opportunity, still collapse. I paused, looking directly at my father. The answer is almost always the same: toxic leadership, mismanagement of assets, and a refusal to recognize the value of the people doing the actual work. A murmur of agreement went through the crowd. These were business people. They understood the language of efficiency, but they didn't know I was speaking a double language. Let me give you a case study, I said. Tonight, we are announcing a new acquisition by Nexus Logistics. We have purchased the debt of a failing local enterprise. A company that has been insolvent for 3 years, surviving only on loans it had no intention of repaying, and the exploitation of silent investors. I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. It wasn't a graph this time. It was a document, a scanned image of a promissory note. And at the top of the document, blown up to 10 feet tall, were the words, Miller & Sons Consulting Group. I heard the gasp from table 42 even without the microphone. Dad knocked his water glass over. The sound of shattering crystal rang out, sharp and violent. This company, I said, gesturing to the screen, represents everything wrong with the old way of doing business. The CEO spent capital on image rather than infrastructure. The VP of marketing, I glanced at Jessica, falsified engagement metrics and embezzled operating funds for personal luxury goods. The room was dead silent now. People were turning in their seats. They were following my gaze. The spotlight operator, sensing the drama, tightened the beam on table 42. We acquired this debt not because we believe in the company, I said, my voice dropping to a register of lethal calm, but because we believe in foreclosure. I saw Dad stand up. He was shaking. He looked like he wanted to shout, to interrupt, to claim this was all a mistake, but he couldn't. He was surrounded by billionaires and industry titans who were hanging on my every word. If he made a scene now, he wouldn't just be ruined, he would be a pariah. Why am I telling you this? I asked the audience, softening my tone. Because I want you to know who I am. I am not a mule. I let that word hang there. Mule. I am the person who carries the load, I said, but I am also the person who owns the road, and tonight I am closing the lane. I looked at the camera broadcasting to the live stream, the same stream Jessica had been using to mock me minutes earlier. To anyone watching who feels like they are carrying the weight of the world while others take the credit, I said, looking right down the lens. To anyone who has been told to wait in the car, to sit at the kids' table, to be invisible. I see you. You are the engine, and it is time you stopped fueling the people who drive over you. If you are listening to this right now and you know exactly how that feels, if you've ever been the one doing the work while someone else took the bow, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Let's create a digital roar that they can't ignore. Type the number 1 in the comments if you are done being a mule. I want to see thousands of ones because we are in this together. I took a deep breath. The adrenaline was stabilizing into a cold, hard resolve. Thank you, I said to the room. Enjoy your dinner. I have some business to conclude. I walked off the stage to a standing ovation. The sound was like thunder, but I didn't care about the applause. I cared about the hunt. As I stepped into the wings, Sarah was there. She handed me a bottle of water and a tablet. That was biblical, she whispered. Where are they? I asked, taking a sip. Security is escorting them to the green room, Sarah said. Richard demanded to see the manager. He claims this is slander. Let's go, I said. Vance? He's already there with the paperwork. I walked down the hallway toward the VIP green room. My heels clicked on the marble floor, a rhythmic countdown. The girl who used to cry in the bathroom because her sister made fun of her shoes was gone. The woman walking down that hall was a shark swimming toward blood in the water. I reached the door. 2 of my personal security guards stood outside. They nodded and opened the double doors. I stepped inside. The green room was designed for relaxation. Plush beige sofas, soft lighting, a fully stocked bar. But right now, it felt like a cage. My family was clustered in the center of the room. Dad was pacing back and forth, his face a mottled purple. Mom was sitting on the edge of a sofa, weeping into a handkerchief. Jessica was furiously tapping on her phone, probably trying to delete her previous posts. When I walked in, the room froze. For a second, nobody spoke. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Dad lunged. You ungrateful, spiteful little bitch, he screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. Tiny, my head of security, stepped out of the shadows, his massive frame blocking Dad's path. Dad stopped short, breathing heavily, his eyes wild. Richard, I said coolly, sit down. Don't you order me around, he sputtered. I am your father. I gave you life. How dare you? How dare you humiliate me in front of my peers, in front of Mark Cuban? Your peers, I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Dad, the people in that room run the world economy. You run a consulting firm that hasn't posted a profit since 2018. They are not your peers. They are my customers. You lied to us, Mom wailed from the sofa. You pretended to be poor. You let us worry about you. We tried to help you. Help me? I walked over to the minibar and poured myself a sparkling water. By making me sit by the kitchen door? By trying to extort $5,000 from me to fund Jessica's vanity project? By calling me a mule? That was just talk, Dad stammered. Locker room talk. We were stressed. We didn't mean it. You meant every word, I said. You've meant it for 30 years. You've always looked at me and seen a utility, not a person. Jessica was the art. I was the frame. You don't thank the frame, do you? You just hang it on the wall and forget it holds everything together. So this is revenge? Jessica sneered. She had recovered some of her composure. She crossed her arms, trying to look unimpressed, but I could see the fear in her eyes. You think because you have some money now, you're better than us? You're still just a nerd, Katie, a nerd in a fancy dress. I don't just have some money, Jessica, I said, turning to face her. I have your money. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice faltering. I signaled to the corner of the room. Lawyer Vance stepped forward. He was holding a thick black binder. He placed it on the coffee table with a heavy thud. "Miss Miller," Vance began, his voice devoid of emotion. "As of 9 p.m. this evening, Nexus Logistics has formally acquired the outstanding liabilities of Miller & Sons Enterprises. This includes the business loans totaling $400,000. Dad went pale. I can restructure that. I have a plan." "Furthermore," Vance continued, ignoring him, "we have acquired the mortgage on the property at 42 Oak Creek Drive." Mom gasped. "Our house? But Redstone Holdings owns our mortgage. We pay them rent." "Redstone Holdings," I said softly, "is a wholly owned subsidiary of Nexus Logistics. I am Redstone Holdings." The realization hit them like a physical blow. Mom covered her mouth. Dad staggered back and collapsed onto the sofa. "You?" Dad whispered. You've been the landlord for 2 years?" "I bought the mortgage when the bank was going to evict you," I said. "I saved you. And how did you repay me? You treated me like garbage in the very house I was paying for." "Katie, please," Mom said, switching instantly to victim mode. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her expensive mascara. "We're family. You wouldn't throw your own parents out on the street. We're old. Where would we go?" "That's a logistics problem," I said, "and frankly, it's not my department." "You can't do this," Dad said, trying to muster some authority. "I will sue you. I have rights. You have nothing," I snapped, my voice rising for the first time. The sudden volume made them all jump. "You have no assets. You have no credit. You have no reputation. I own the roof over your head. I own the debt on your car. I own the very shirt on your back, Richard, because I know you used the company credit card to buy it, and I own the company now." I walked closer to them, towering over the sofa where they huddled. "I gave you chance after chance," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Tonight, in the car, I asked if you wanted me to come in. I gave you one last opportunity to treat me like a human being, and you told me to wait in the car." I leaned down, looking Dad right in the eyes. "Well, Dad, I'm not waiting in the car anymore. I'm driving the bus, and I'm running you over." "Katie," Jessica started, her voice shaking. "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot with the business thing, but I can help you. I have followers. We can partner up. Nexus X Lux. Think of the synergy." I stared at her. The audacity was truly breathtaking. Even now, with the blade at her throat, she was trying to hustle me. "Synergy," I repeated. I looked at Vance. "Show them the other file." Vance opened the binder to the second section. He pulled out a clear plastic sleeve containing a document. "This," Vance said, "is the loan application for $50,000, secured against the equity of the house, dated 3 days ago." Jessica stopped breathing. "And these," Vance pointed to the bottom of the page, "are the signatures of Richard and Linda Miller." "We never signed that," Dad shouted, looking at the paper. "I told Jessica we couldn't." He stopped. He looked at the paper. He looked at Jessica. Jessica shrank back into the cushions. I was going to pay it back as soon as the launch happened. It was a bridge loan." "You forged their signatures, Jessica," I said. "That's not a bridge loan. That's bank fraud. That's identity theft. That's a felony." The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. "Fraud?" Mom whispered. She looked at her golden child. "Jessica, you stole the house?" "I didn't steal it," Jessica screamed. "I was using it. It was just paper. Katie is making a big deal out of nothing." "Nothing?" I laughed. "It's a federal crime, Jess. Up to 30 years in prison." "Prison?" Jessica squeaked. "And here is the beautiful part," I said, crossing my arms. Since I own the mortgage and I am now the primary creditor, it is up to me whether to press charges or not. I watched the color drain from Jessica's face. I watched the realization dawn on my parents that their star was actually a criminal who had almost cost them everything. So, I said, checking my diamond watch, here is the deal. The air in the green room was toxic. It smelled of expensive perfume mixed with the sour sweat of fear. The deal? Dad asked, his voice hoarse. He looked 10 years older than he had an hour ago. The arrogance was gone, scraped away by the brutal sandpaper of reality. Option A, I said, holding up one finger. I hand this file to the district attorney tomorrow morning. Jessica goes to prison. Dad, you go down for complicity because the funds were funneled through your business accounts, and I'm sure an audit will show you knew about the creative accounting. The press will have a field day. Father and daughter duo in fraud scandal. You'll never work in this town again, not even as a greeter at Walmart. I let that sink in. Jessica was sobbing now. Ugly, gasping sobs. Mom was staring at the floor, rocking back and forth. Option B, I continued. Option B, Dad whispered. Please, option B. You sign over the house. Today. You sign over the rights to Miller & Sons Enterprises. You declare total bankruptcy. But where will we live? Mom cried. That's our home. We've been there for 30 years. It hasn't been your home for 2 years, Mom. It's been my investment property, and you are terrible tenants. I walked over to the table and picked up a set of documents Vance had prepared. You have 30 days to vacate, I said. Take your clothes, take your photos. Leave the furniture. It's collateral for the debt you owe me. Leave the cars. The cars too? Jessica wailed. But how will I get around? The bus runs every 20 minutes, I said. Or you can walk. It's good for the glutes. Katie, be reasonable, Dad pleaded. 30 days? We have nowhere to go. We have no money. I know, I said. That's why I'm being generous. I'm giving you a severance package. I pulled out a small envelope from my clutch. I tossed it onto the coffee table. $5,000, I said. They stared at the envelope. That's exactly the amount you tried to extort from me 3 days ago, I said. See, I listen. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. $5,000 to start your new life. Use it wisely. Don't spend it all on a website design. This is cruel, Mom wept. You are cruel. I am just, I corrected. There is a difference. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It opened, and a young man walked in. It was James, Jessica's fiancé. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne, grinning. He hadn't been in the room. He had been out networking. Hey, I heard the speech was amazing. Why is everyone so quiet? Did we win? James asked, looking around the devastated room. He saw the tears. He saw the lawyer. He saw me standing like an executioner. James, Jessica sobbed, reaching out to him. James, help me. She's taking everything. We're losing the house. We're losing the money. James froze. He looked at Jessica, then at me. Is this true? He asked me. They are bankrupt, I said simply, and Jessica is facing potential fraud charges if she doesn't comply with the settlement. She has 0 assets. In fact, she has negative assets. James looked at the champagne glasses in his hands. He looked at Jessica's tear-streaked face. The calculation in his eyes was instant. He wasn't a bad guy, necessarily, just a shallow one. He was marrying Jessica for the luxe lifestyle. He sat the glasses down on a side table. I can't deal with this, James said. James, Jessica whispered. Baby? I have a reputation, Jess, he said, backing toward the door. I work in finance. I can't be attached to a fraud investigation. I'm sorry. James, no! Jessica screamed, scrambling off the sofa to chase him. He slammed the door in her face. Jessica collapsed against the door, sliding down to the floor in a heap of tulle and despair. The room was silent again, save for her weeping. He never loved you, I said to her back. He loved the idea of you, just like you loved the idea of yourself. But ideas don't pay the rent. I turned back to my parents. Sign the papers, I said. Vance will witness. You have 5 minutes. If you don't sign, I call the police. Dad looked at Mom. Mom nodded weakly. They were beaten. Completely and utterly beaten. Dad picked up the pen. His hand shook so badly he could barely form the letters. He signed the deed transfer. He signed the bankruptcy declaration. He signed the confession of judgment. When he was done, he dropped the pen. He looked up at me, his eyes hollow. "Are you happy?" he asked. "You've destroyed your family. Are you happy?" I looked at them, the 3 people who were supposed to be my safety net, who instead turned out to be the trap. "I haven't destroyed this family, Dad," I said quietly. "I just turned on the lights. You were the ones who couldn't survive the glare." I turned to Vance. "Wrap it up. Give them the check." Vance handed Dad the envelope with the $5,000 check. Dad took it like it was radioactive. "You have 30 days, Vance repeated. "Security will escort you out of the building now. Please do not speak to the press. If you do, the deal is void and we proceed with the criminal charges." "Get out," I said. They stood up. They looked small, shrunken. They shuffled toward the door, past Jessica, who was still sobbing on the floor. Dad had to help her up. They left the room without looking back at me. As the door closed behind them, the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't toxic. It was clean. I walked over to the sofa where they had been sitting. I sat down. I kicked off my Louboutins. Sarah walked in from the adjoining room where she had been watching the feed. She sat down next to me. "It's done?" she asked. "It's done," I said. "How do you feel?" I closed my eyes. I searched for guilt. I searched for regret. I searched for sadness. I found none of it. "I feel," I said, opening my eyes and looking at the ceiling, "lighter, like I'd just put down a backpack filled with bricks that I've been carrying since I was 6 years old." "You did good, boss," Sarah said. "You did good." 7 months later. The autumn leaves in Central Park were burning gold and crimson, a sharp contrast to the gray steel of the city. I sat on a park bench, sketching in a charcoal pad. It was a hobby I had abandoned in college because Dad said art was for people who don't want to make money. Now, I made art because I wanted to. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from Forbes. Top 30 under 30, How Katie Miller Redefined Global Logistics. I swiped it away. I didn't need the validation anymore. My life had changed completely. Nexus Logistics was thriving. We had expanded into Europe and Asia. I had moved out of the cramped apartment in Astoria and bought a loft in Tribeca. Lots of light, lots of space for my art. But the biggest change wasn't the money or the apartment. It was the people. I looked up. Sarah was walking toward me holding 2 coffees. Beside her was Vance, looking unusually casual in a polo shirt. And with them was Tiny, my security guard, walking a tiny French bulldog. These were my people, my chosen family, people who respected me for my mind, not my utility. People who brought me coffee not because they wanted alone, but because they knew I took it black with 2 sugars. "Earth to Katie," Sarah said, handing me a cup. "Stop brooding. It's a beautiful day." "I'm not brooding," I smiled. "I'm observing." "Well, observe this," Vance said, handing me a file. "Final confirmation on the foreclosure sale. The Connecticut house sold yesterday." "Who bought it?" I asked, taking a sip of coffee. "A nice young couple," Vance said. "Veterinarians. They plan to fix the shutters." Good, I said. The house deserves some love. And regarding the other matter, Vance said, his voice lowering, we have an update on the defendants. I paused. Do I want to know? You might, Sarah said. Tiny drove past their new place. It's in Queens, Tiny rumbled. Basement apartment, near the airport, noisy. And employment? Richard is working at a car dealership, Vance said. Used cars. He's not the manager. He's on the lot. Commission only, Sarah added. And Jessica? She's working at a diner, Sarah said, waitressing, and she deleted her Instagram. I looked at the charcoal sketch in my lap. It was a drawing of a bridge, strong, resilient, capable of bearing weight. Do you want to see them? Sarah asked gently. We can drive by. I thought about it. Did I want to see them suffering? Did I need to see Dad trying to sell a lemon to a teenager? Did I need to see Jessica wiping tables, her manicure gone, her ego bruised? Part of me did. The part of me that was hurt for 30 years wanted to gloat. But the other part of me, the CEO, the artist, the woman who was finally free, realized something. Looking at them wouldn't add anything to my life. Their failure wasn't my success. My success was my success. Their failure was just the inevitable result of their character. No, I said, closing the sketchpad. I don't need to see them. You sure? Vance asked. I'm sure, I said. I have a meeting at 2, then a gallery opening at 6. I don't have time for the past. We stood up and started walking out of the park. The wind was brisk, but I felt warm. As we reached the street, a bus pulled up. It was crowded, noisy, and smelling of exhaust. Through the window, just for a fleeting second, I saw a face. It was Mom. She looked tired. Her hair was gray. She had stopped dyeing it. She was holding a plastic grocery bag, staring out the window with a look of utter resignation. She looked right at me. I stopped. She saw me. She saw the designer coat. She saw the friends around me. She saw the peace on my face. Her eyes widened. She raised a hand, pressing it against the dirty glass. Her lips moved. Katie. I looked at her. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just nodded, a single, brief acknowledgement of her existence. Then I turned my head. Let's go, I said to Sarah. We're going to be late. I walked away. The bus pulled away from the curb, carrying my mother back to the life she had earned, while I walked forward into the life I had built. I never looked back. Not once. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. You are not alone. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories about truth, justice, and the messy business of being human. Until next time, stay strong.